Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a vampire deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this one because it is a part of the 15,000 subscriber extravaganza where we're going to be doing zombie deck profiles for an entire week, and I love vampires. Vampires are probably one of my favorite archetypes of the entire game, and being able to throw zombies in with them is just absolutely great because it just strengthens the deck so much. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and let's get straight on in this. But before we do, I really quickly want to mention you guys, we do have a Ko-Fi and a Patreon down in the description, so if you guys would like to donate to the channel, any donations are very much so appreciated, and I really appreciate those because they really help out the channel. So let's get straight on to this, guys. So first off, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Vampire Scarlet Scourge. So Vampire Scarlet Scourge is a really good 2-of in this deck because if this card is normal or special summon, you can pay 1,000 life points to target a vampire monster in your graveyard except another copy of itself, and then special summon it, but it can't attack this turn. You can only use its effect once per turn, and then at the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon that monster in your graveyard, from their graveyard, which you guys are going to look at this deck and go, wait a minute, how am I going to XYZ summon into Vampire Sheridan, which is really easily actually done because of its first effect. If you use a monster that is originally owned by your opponent, its level becomes 6. So that's something to keep in mind because this card really makes it easy to go into Vampire Sheridan. Then we play 2 copies of Vampire Fraulein. Vampire Fraulin's really good as a 2-of in my opinion in this deck because she just special summons herself from the hand if you control a zombie monster in battles or an attack is declared, which is really cool. And then it also really combos really well with the copy of Vampire's Domain. This card's really good and combos super well with it. You can pay in life points in increments of 100 all the way up to 2,000, and then a zombie monster that's battling gains that much attack, which is really good. And then it just combos so well with Domain. So just is a good 2-of in this deck. Definitely played it too. 1 copy of Vampire Shadow. Vampire Shadow, when it's normal summon, you can special summon a dark vampire monster from your hand or deck, except another copy of itself. And if you do, only that monster for the rest can attack. And it cannot be used for the XYZ summon of an XYZ monster, except for dark, which is not that big of a deal because we only play 1 dark XYZ monster. We only play 3 XYZ monsters in the entire deck, and the only one we're going to summon off of this is Dark. But we can also link summon with the 2 monsters that we special summon, so it's really easy to do that. 1 copy of Vampire Vamp. This card is really good because once per turn, when a vampire monster is normal or summoned to your side of the field, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls and whose attack is higher than the monster. Higher than this card's, and then equip that monster to this card. And this card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of all monsters equipped to this card. And if this card is sent to the graveyard while equipped by a monster by this effect, you can special summon this card back from your graveyard. It comes out at 2,000, so it's not huge, or she's not huge, but she's probably the best one in the deck because she just relinquished. She has like a relinquish effect that she just keeps taking monsters off your opponent's side of the field, and she gets really big really quick. Hands down my favorite vampire of them all. Then we play 3 copies of Vampire Familiar. Vampire Familiar is kind of like the same thing as Vampire Retainer, which we both play 3 of these in this deck. But basically what they do is if this card is special summon, you can pay 500 life points to add 1 vampire monster from your deck to your hand. It's another copy of itself. And if this card's in your graveyard, you can send a vampire card from your hand or face them in field graveyard to special summon them, but banish them when they leave the field. Vampire Retainer has the exact same effect as Vampire Familiar, but Retainer's effect is basically it lets you search a spell or trap and not a monster, which is pretty cool, but having the extra vampires on the field is really nice. Vampires really didn't have a good monster that they could just normal summon until these came out. Then we play, for the zombie engine, we play 2 copies of Ballardrot. Ballardrot's effect is basically if you have a spell or you have a continuous spell, or not a continuous spell, a field spell in your field spell zone, you can special summon it from your graveyard during your standby or during this standby phase, so either player's standby phase. And then when a zombie monster's effect is activated, you can either negate that effect or banish 1 monster on the field, or banish a monster on the field or in the graveyard, which is really cool with Zombie World because Zombie World, if it's on the field, it makes all monsters on the field become zombies, and all monsters in the graveyard become zombies as well. So if your opponent activates a zombie effect, which if you have Zombie World, it's always going to be a zombie effect, you can just instantly negate it. So it's a good negation, and it's a 2800 beat stick, and you really need to play it as a, 2 copies of Necro Netherworld Banshee. Necro Netherworld Banshee lets you banish from the graveyard to immediately activate a zombie world from your hand or deck, which is really good. 2 copies of Glow Bloom. Glow Bloom comes in a lot more clutch in this deck than I would have imagined. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard to add a level 5 or higher zombie monster from your deck to your hand, which is literally any of these, like Doom King, Scarlet Scourge, Vamp, Shadow, and Frolin. Like, all of these up here just can be added directly from your deck to your hand off of the Glow Up Bloom, which is really good and really, really, really nice to be able to just immediately add those cards from your deck to your hand. And if you have the zombie world on the field, you can just immediately special summon them instead, which is why it's not that big of a deal that we play so many high level zombie monsters in the deck. I just played 2 copies of Unizombie for space. You could definitely play 3 in this deck and get away with it, but I didn't want to play 3 for space reasons. And it's really easy to special summon it off of the Shiranui Solitaire, because you just normal summon the Solitaire, send the Solitaire to grave, and then immediately special summon out Unizombie, which is your only target. So you're essentially playing 5 Unizombies. So it's really easy to open it up as an opener card in this deck. 2 copies of Mizuki, which we just play as a 2 of in this deck, because when it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to special summon another zombie from the grave. And then 1 copy of Gozuki for our last zombie monster in the whole deck. Gozuki's effect is basically, during your main phase, you can send a zombie monster from your deck to the grave. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish a zombie monster from your graveyard, except this card, and then special summon a zombie monster from your hand, which is really good to get your high-level vampire monsters out of your hand. So Gozuki is an MVP in this deck, I have to say. So that's it for the monsters, guys. You don't really need any hand traps because we have so much other negation in this deck. And with Super Holly at 3 still, it's really something. I really hope they don't hit it on the ban list, and this might come out after the ban list. So if any of the zombie decks have a problem, I'll definitely put a pinned comment and show you guys how to fix it. So 1 copy of Zombie or Vampire Desire. Vampire Desire is an interesting card, but I just played as a 1 of. It lets you activate one of the effects when you activate. You get to target a face-up monster you control and send a vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level from that monster. And if you do, the targeted monster becomes that level and send monster to the graveyard. And then, or you can target a vampire monster in your grave and then send a monster you control to the graveyard, and if you do, you get to special summon that target, which is really good, but I feel like it's searchable, so you only need it as a 1 of. 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Super Polymerization is so good in this deck, and you really need it as a 3 of, because you can just fusion summon into any of your, Dragon Neck or Nether Souls, into your, you can fusion summon in Dragon Neck or Nether Soul, Starving Infusion Dragon, Mud Dragon, like, there's just endless amounts of possibilities with this card. 3 copies of Call by the Grave. Call by the Grave just helps us a lot because you don't want to get hand trapped in this deck. 3 copies of Zombie World. Zombie World is really good in here because basically it makes all monsters on the field and in the graveyard zombies, and then your opponent cannot special summon, or neither player can special summon monsters, or normal summon monsters, or excuse me, tribute summon. I'm going to get there eventually. Tribute summon monsters except for zombies. Then I play 3 copies of Vampire Domain. I really feel like you need to get to Vampire Domain as quickly as possible. That's why I played as a 3 of. You could probably get away with 2, but once per turn you can pay 500, and then during your main phase this turn you can normal summon 1 vampire in addition to your normal summoner set. Really good effect, but the thing that I like about this card a lot is that it also has the ability that each time your vampire monster inflicts damage to your opponent, you gain that same amount of life points. That's what's really good to me, especially comboing with Frolin, because it basically makes Frolin's effect free, because you just keep swinging and activating Frolin's effect with Domain, and it just loops where you're just OTKing your opponent consistently with Domain and Frolin. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Vampire Awakening and 2 copies of Vampire Domination. Basically what these do is the Vampire Awakening lets you special summon a monster from your deck that's a vampire monster but destroyed during the end phase of the turn. And then Vampire Domination is crazy. When a spell or trap or monster effect is activated while you control a vampire monster, negate the activation if you do destroy that card. And if it was a monster that you negated, you gain life points equal to the original attack. I really want to play this at 3, and I'm thinking about dropping a single copy of Domain for this, for a 3rd copy of this, or dropping a Domain for the 3rd Unizombie. I don't know yet, but I know that they're all searchable, so that's what keeps pulling me back and saying 2 and 2 and 2 is plenty. So I might drop the Domain for the other Unizombie. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Vampire Sheridan. Vampire Sheridan is super easy to go into in this deck. You just have to summon a Scarlet Scourge and then overlay it with a monster that your opponent originally controlled because it becomes level 6. And then once per turn, you can detach material from this card to target one card your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. And then once per turn, if a monster card is sent to the graveyard, to your opponent's graveyard by a card effect, or monster is destroyed by battle and sent to your opponent's graveyard, you can detach a material from this card to special summon one of those monsters to your field in defense position. So it's really easy to go into multiples of these. That's why I play 2 of them, is because he is so easy to go into. So it's just a good 2 of. 1 copy of Crimson Knight Vampire Braum. Crimson Knight Vampire Braum is not the greatest, but it's really hard to get rid of sometimes, because you can detach a material from this card and then target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and then special summon that target to your side of the field. But if you do, only that monster can attack, which kind of sucks. But it also has the ability that once per turn during the standby phase, if this card of the standby phase after this card you control was destroyed by your opponent's card, either by battle or by card effect, and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card to your side of the field and face up defense. So it's really hard to get rid of sometimes, because if it gets destroyed, it's just going to come right back. It's 2,500 beat stick. So it's a really good, in my opinion, 1 of in here, but I probably wouldn't play it any more than 1 anymore. 1 copy of Beals, because you can go into Beals extremely easily, and Beals is so good. 1 copy of Cyframe Lord Omega. Omega is crazy good in this deck because you can just go into Omega and just go after your opponent in this deck. 1 copy of Red Eyes Zombie Necro Dragon. Basically gains 100 attack for each zombie monster on the field and in the graveyards. Really good effect, because if you have a zombie roll on the field, it just makes it go up to be humongous. And then when a monster is destroyed by battle, and you can special summon a zombie monster from either player's graveyard to your field, which is good because they all become zombies. Boral Sword to OTK really easily. Avendrid Savior, because it's good to send cards to the graveyard with this card. 2 copies of Vampire Sucker. Vampire Sucker is such a good card in this deck, because I make this card all the time, even though links are not going to... I mean, links are going to matter, but they're not going to matter anymore. Because basically what this card does is, if you attribute a zombie, or if you attribute summon a monster, you can attribute a zombie monster your opponent controls, even though you do not control them. And then it also has the ability that you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, and then special summon it to a zone this card points to, which is really cool. And then if a zombie monster is special summoned from either player's graveyard, you could draw a card. This is usually my opener card, and then I draw cards and dig into the deck. 1 copy of Linkuriboh. You can make Linkuriboh really easily in this deck. It's super easy to make. You just use the Vampire Familiar or the Glow Up Bloom to make it, and so you need it as a 1 of. 2 copies of Dragon Necro Nethersoul Dragon. I make this all the time. I play it as a 2 of, but you could probably get away with 1 copy of it, and then maybe play a Shogun Saiga if you wanted to go for more synchros. You could probably just get away with 1, maybe. Starving Venom Fusion Dragon is a really good card for Super Poly, and so is Mud Dragon. These are all really good Super Poly targets in this zombie deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a really fun deck to play around with, and it's super easy to play, because basically you're just trying to get as many zombies on the field as possible and overwhelm your opponent and OTK them. And you have a free Infernity Barrier with your Vampire Domination. So anyways, guys, that's it for the deck. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit that bell notification, become part of the notification squad. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See you around, guys.